In the ever-evolving landscape of American politics, few figures have navigated the turbulent waters as skillfully as Marco Rubio. Once a relatively low-profile U.S. Senator from Florida, Rubio has recently ascended to prominence as Secretary of State in the Donald Trump administration, a role that has thrust him into the spotlight and positioned him as a key player in shaping U.S. foreign policy. This transformation has sparked considerable interest and debate regarding his influence, priorities, and the implications of his actions on the global stage. Rubio's journey in national politics began with his election to the Senate in 2010, but it was not until he was appointed Secretary of State that his impact became more visible. As a foreign policy hawk, he has been vocal about the need for the United States to take a firmer stance against authoritarian regimes, including those in China, Russia, and Iran. In a recent press conference, he underscored the importance of defending both American values and national security, stating, "My job is to keep America strong and keep America a resilient nation for many generations to come." This commitment has resonated with many who view his tenure as a necessary counter to global complacency. Born to Cuban immigrant parents, Rubio's upbringing heavily influenced his political philosophy. His family's experiences with communism instilled in him a passionate commitment to the American dream and a deep-seated opposition to totalitarianism. This personal narrative fuels his advocacy for policies aimed at dismantling oppressive regimes, especially in Latin America, where he has often been described as a virtual Secretary of State for Latin America due to his extensive involvement in shaping U.S. policy in the region. His recent initiatives highlight his commitment to human rights and democracy. For instance, Rubio played a pivotal role in the passage of the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, marking a significant shift in U.S.-China relations. His efforts to hold the Cuban regime accountable were also notable, as he worked closely with the White House to impose sanctions that target the regime's military and economic apparatus. "If there is a federal job that must be done, one person I can depend on to get it done is Marco," Trump stated, emphasizing Rubio's reliability in executing critical foreign policy directives. However, Rubio's tenure has not been without controversy. A recent exchange on social media highlighted the tensions between the U.S. and its allies, particularly when Rubio criticized Germany for designating the far-right Alternative for Germany (AfD) as an extremist entity. He argued that the move represented tyranny in disguise, igniting debate over the balance between national security and democratic freedoms. In response, Germany's Foreign Office defended its actions, underscoring the need for vigilance against extremism. This incident reveals the complexities and challenges Rubio faces in navigating foreign relations, particularly in an era marked by rising populism and nationalist sentiments. As he balances his role as Secretary of State with that of acting National Security Advisor, a position not held since Henry Kissinger, Rubio is poised to wield considerable influence over U.S. foreign policy. His approach reflects a blend of traditional Republican values with a staunch commitment to confronting perceived threats to global democracy. Yet critics argue that his alignment with Trump's often unilateral approach may undermine established alliances and principles of international cooperation. Looking ahead, the implications of Rubio's leadership will be closely scrutinized, especially as global geopolitical dynamics continue to shift. His advocacy for conservative values, including free enterprise and limited government, coupled with his emphasis on faith and community, paints a picture of a leader who seeks to empower rather than marginalize. As Rubio himself stated, conservatism is not about leaving people behind. It is about empowering people to catch up. In conclusion, Marco Rubio's ascent to the forefront of American diplomacy signals a new chapter in U.S. foreign policy, one that is defined by a blend of personal conviction and political strategy. As he navigates the challenges ahead both domestically and internationally, it remains to be seen how his actions will resonate not only with American citizens but with the global community as he moves forward. There is little doubt that his presence will continue to shape the contours of international relations in the years to come. In a troubling development that intertwines U.S. foreign policy with the resurgence of extremist narratives, experts are raising alarms about the unintended consequences of Donald Trump's second presidency. The former president and his Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth have become unlikely figures in the recruitment propaganda of the Islamic State (IS), drawing connections between their public personas and the terror group's messaging strategies. Historically, Trump has had a contentious relationship with IS, famously deriding its leader and claiming credit for dismantling its caliphate. However, as his administration shifts focus away from the terror group, IS has adeptly exploited the current political climate to bolster its recruitment efforts. Analysts suggest that Trump's dismantling of the international order, his close ties with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and particularly Hegseth's controversial tattoos have all become focal points in IS propaganda. Lucas Weber, a senior threat intelligence analyst at Tech Against Terrorism, noted that IS has capitalized on these developments to define the U.S. as a crusader state, a term long used by jihadists to characterize Western nations. Weber pointed out that the recent uptick in domestic incidents involving IS supporters is indicative of the group's enduring influence within the United States. For instance, the attack in New Orleans on New Year's Day, where a veteran killed 14 people, and an attempted mass shooting by an ex-National Guardsman in Michigan illustrate how IS's online messaging continues to pose a security threat. The impact of Hegseth's tattoos has been particularly pronounced. According to a recent IS article, the imagery of Hegseth's body art, featuring crusader-related symbols and Arabic script translating to infidel, has been used to fuel the group's narrative of a religious war against Jews and Christians. This takes us back to the media stir just days ago, the article stated, highlighting how Hegseth's visible tattoos serve as a rallying point for IS propaganda. A recent post on the encrypted messaging platform Rocket Chat, which IS uses to communicate with followers, reflects a growing perception among militants that such symbols are evidence of a concerted effort by the U.S. to wage war against Islam. Moreover, Trump's foreign policy decisions, particularly his administration's support for Israel during the ongoing conflict in Gaza, have provided IS with additional fodder for its recruitment campaigns. IS propaganda has harnessed outrage over the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, framing it as a call to arms for Muslims worldwide. Revenge for the Muslims in Gaza has become a prominent slogan, resonating with disaffected individuals seeking a cause. As IS attempts to rebuild in a world increasingly hostile to its existence, it has found ways to adapt its messaging to attract new recruits. This strategy is evident in the activities of IS Khorasan, the group's Afghan affiliate, which has been observed targeting both local and international audiences with anti-US rhetoric. Ricardo Valle, a researcher focused on ISK, commented on how the group capitalizes on perceived Western interference in the region, linking events in Afghanistan and Syria to a broader narrative of resistance against a united front of global powers. The emergence of IS Somalia, which has gained traction and attention due to Pentagon airstrikes, also highlights the shifting dynamics of the terror group's recruitment strategies. Weber emphasizes that the group is becoming increasingly ambitious in its international endeavors, using U.S. policy in the region as a focal point to attract foreign fighters. As the ramifications of Trump's and Hegseth's actions continue to unfold, the implications for U.S. security and foreign relations are significant. The intertwining narratives of domestic extremism and international jihadism illustrate a complex challenge for policymakers. The future remains uncertain as IS seeks to capitalize on these developments, and the U.S. faces the urgent task of countering a narrative that has found new life in the current political landscape. As both domestic and international pressures mount, the need for a cohesive strategy to combat extremist ideologies has never been more critical. In a world increasingly aware of the impact of food production and public health on society, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has emerged as a controversial figure, championing an unconventional approach to both environmental and health-related issues. Recently, Kennedy has made headlines with his outspoken views on avian influenza and the broader implications of food production, which he associates with what he terms big food. His comments have ignited debates about vaccination strategies for birds amid a growing avian flu crisis and raised questions regarding the agricultural practices that underpin food security in the United States. Kennedy, who serves as the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, recently addressed the severe repercussions of the avian flu outbreak during an interview with Fox News' Sean Hannity. He asserted that vaccinating birds against the virus could inadvertently create mutation factories, exacerbating the problem rather than mitigating it. Kennedy emphasized that the virus is already endemic in wild bird populations, making eradication nearly impossible. Avian flu will never be eradicated, he stated, cautioning against practices that could lead to the emergence of more virulent strains. His comments follow a troubling trend in U.S. agriculture, where farmers have been forced to cull over 166 million chickens in efforts to control the spread of the virus, leading to significant disruptions in the egg market and other poultry products. "That's why we have an egg crisis," Kennedy noted, addressing the immediate economic impacts of the culling strategy. Kennedy's perspective diverges sharply from conventional methods employed in Europe, where vaccination has been utilized as a preventive measure during outbreaks. The European Medicines Agency has endorsed this approach, arguing that it minimizes the frequency and duration of outbreaks. However, Kennedy argues that U.S. agencies, including the CDC and FDA, have consistently advised against vaccination due to concerns over leaky vaccines that may not provide adequate protection, thus potentially fueling the virus's mutation. This debate is not merely academic, it raises significant implications for public health policy and agricultural practices. Kennedy advocates for a more hands-on approach that involves isolating infected flocks to allow natural selection to occur, thus identifying and breeding birds with genetic resistance to the virus. He suggests that this could lead to the development of therapeutic drugs that might also benefit humans. "We should be intensively testing therapeutic drugs on those flocks," he argued, promoting a strategy that could potentially transform how both avian flu and related public health issues are managed. As the avian flu crisis unfolds, Kennedy's controversial stance reflects a broader conversation about the intersection of public health, food production, and corporate influence in agriculture. His assertions challenge the status quo and invite scrutiny of the existing frameworks that govern food safety and agricultural practices in the U.S. Looking ahead, the implications of Kennedy's views on vaccination and agricultural practices will likely continue to resonate, especially as the avian flu situation evolves. The food industry policymakers and public health officials must navigate these complex issues, weighing the risks of vaccination against the potential benefits of alternative strategies. As the dialogue progresses, the future of food security in the United States may hinge on the balance between innovative approaches and established practices, making this a crucial moment for the intersection of health and agriculture. In a case that has captured national attention, Luigi Mangione, the 26-year-old accused of murdering United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, is making headlines for his legal team's recent motion to block the death penalty. Mangione's attorneys argue that the government's intention to seek capital punishment is politically motivated, framing it as a political stunt orchestrated by Attorney General Pam Bondi to align with President Trump's agenda. The motion has raised significant questions about the intersection of judicial processes and political influence in high-profile criminal cases. Mangione stands accused of stalking and murdering Thompson outside a Manhattan hotel on December 4, 2024. Following Thompson's death, which left behind a grieving family and a void in the leadership of one of the nation's largest health insurance companies, the case took a dramatic turn when Bondi publicly announced the government's intention to pursue the death penalty. This announcement came in the context of a broader initiative to combat violent crime, encapsulated in the Trump administration's slogan to make America safe again. In their motion, Mangione's lawyers assert that Bondi's statements have tainted the potential jury pool, undermining his constitutional rights to a fair trial. They argue that the Attorney General has disregarded established Justice Department protocols for considering death penalty cases, which typically include a thorough evaluation of the defendant's background and mitigating factors. Mr. Mangioni's background reveals an exemplary life in every respect, his lawyers contended, highlighting his achievements such as being valedictorian and a beloved member of a close-knit family. The legal implications of this case extend beyond Mangioni's fate. They also reflect a growing concern about how political agendas can influence judicial proceedings. Mangioni was apprehended days after the murder identified in a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. After a nationwide manhunt, his case has not only drawn legal scrutiny but has also garnered public support, evidenced by a crowdfunding campaign that has raised over $850,000 for his legal defense, indicating a faction of the public sympathetic to his cause, particularly those disenchanted with the health insurance sector. As the proceedings unfold, the potential consequences of Mangioni's case resonate within the broader discourse on capital punishment and the role of political influence in the justice system. The Justice Department has yet to respond to the motion, but the legal community is closely watching how this case will navigate the complexities of law and politics. In the wake of Mangioni's legal challenges, discussions are emerging about the need for a more insulated judicial process, particularly in cases that attract significant public and political attention. The ongoing dialogue reflects a critical moment in American legal history, where the balance between justice and political expediency is increasingly scrutinized. As the case progresses, observers will be keenly attuned to its implications not only for Mangioni but for the integrity of the judicial system as a whole. Future developments will likely further illuminate the intricate relationship between law and politics in high-stakes criminal cases. In a bold forecast that has captured the attention of economic analysts and investors alike, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent confidently predicts that the American economy will be growing at a rate exceeding 3% by this time next year. This optimistic outlook follows a challenging first quarter where the economy contracted at an annualized rate of 0.3%. Bessent attributes this anticipated turnaround to a strategic combination of tax relief, pro-growth trade policies, and deregulation implemented by the Trump administration. During a recent interview with Bloomberg Television, Bessent expressed a palpable sense of optimism about the economic agenda's potential to revitalize growth. "I expect certainly by this time next year we will be north of 3% growth and that we will be turning the corner toward the end of the year," he stated, underscoring his belief that the administration's initiatives will soon bear fruit. This prediction comes on the heels of a turbulent economic landscape where businesses have been stockpiling imports in anticipation of tariffs announced by the Trump administration. The first quarter's contraction has left many CEOs feeling pessimistic about the future, as indicated by a recent poll conducted by Fortune and Deloitte. However, Bessent remains steadfast in his belief that the U.S. economy will rebound strongly as the effects of the administration's policies take hold. One of the pivotal aspects of the administration's economic strategy is the tax reform package that Trump has dubbed the One Big Beautiful Bill. Bessent highlighted a key feature of this proposal, allowing domestic manufacturers to fully expense their equipment purchases rather than depreciating them over time. This change aims to lower taxable income and stimulate investment, thereby fostering economic growth. Moreover, a planned reduction in pharmaceutical costs could further contribute to economic stability by alleviating the federal deficit. Despite the positive outlook, Bessent did express concerns regarding potential obstacles. He cautioned that litigation challenges from courts and opposition from Democratic lawmakers could hinder the implementation of necessary projects, particularly those aimed at supporting the burgeoning demand for energy and AI data centers. "If we can get through that, I think we'll be fine," he stated, reflecting a cautious optimism. On the trade front, Bessent indicated that the administration is poised to announce several significant trade deals in the coming weeks. He noted that negotiations with 18 key trading partners are progressing with a particular focus on finalizing a deal with India. However, relations with the European Union remain complex, especially following Trump's recent directive to impose a 50% tariff on EU imports, a move that has drawn criticism and concern over escalating trade tensions. In addition to trade negotiations, Bessent addressed the current state of U.S. Treasury yields, which have risen sharply. He argued that this trend reflects broader global demand for government bonds, rather than a diminishing appetite from foreign investors. He suggested that the administration's support for digital assets could stimulate further demand for U.S. sovereign debt. As the administration prepares for a possible partial privatization of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, Bessent emphasized the need for careful planning to avoid widening the gap between mortgage rates and risk-free Treasury yields. There are several ways to do it, and we are exploring it, he noted, signaling a methodical approach to this significant financial undertaking. As the U.S. navigates these economic challenges and opportunities, the focus will inevitably shift to the impacts of the administration's policies on both domestic and global fronts. The upcoming months are likely to reveal whether Bessent's optimistic forecasts will materialize and how the interplay between trade negotiations and economic growth will shape the landscape. With Bessent at the helm of Treasury's economic strategy, many will be watching closely to see if the anticipated growth trajectory holds true. On Memorial Day, President Donald Trump delivered a speech at Arlington National Cemetery that underscored his administration's focus on military valor while simultaneously touting his own political achievements. The event, traditionally a somber tribute to America's fallen soldiers, was marked by Trump's characteristic blend of solemnity and self-promotion. During his address, Trump honored the sacrifices made by service members, recounting personal stories of valor and gratitude. "We certainly know what we owe to them," he stated, emphasizing the contributions of those who fought in significant battles for the nation. His remarks, however, quickly shifted to self-aggrandizement as he claimed credit for bringing the Summer Olympics and soccer's World Cup to the United States and discussed plans for an upcoming military parade in Washington, D.C. "We're doing so very well right now considering the circumstances," Trump declared, pivoting to a message of political resilience and promising that the nation would achieve unprecedented success under his leadership. This assertion came on the heels of a wreath-laying ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknowns attended by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Vice President J.D. Vance, both military veterans. In a striking contrast to the dignified setting, Trump's social media posts leading up to his speech were rife with vitriol directed at political opponents. He referred to those who criticized him as the scum that spent the last 4 years trying to destroy our country, a tone that starkly contrasted with the reverence typically associated with Memorial Day. Amid the Memorial Day reflections, Trump also reignited his contentious relationship with Harvard University. He suggested redirecting $3 billion in grants previously earmarked for the institution towards vocational schools instead. This announcement was framed not as a new funding cut but rather as a redistribution of funds already frozen by his administration. The move is part of an ongoing battle between the Trump administration and Harvard, which has faced accusations of promoting anti-Semitism and liberal ideology. Simultaneously, the economic landscape was shaped by Trump's decision to delay the imposition of a 50% tariff on European Union imports until July 9. Following a conversation with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, the announcement was met with cautious optimism from European officials who expressed a commitment to constructive and focused efforts toward a trade agreement. The delay provided a reprieve for markets which had reacted negatively to the threat of swift tariffs in previous days. In tandem with these developments, Trump continued to push for the passage of his domestic agenda in Congress, urging the Senate to support a fiscal bill that has seen pushback from fiscal conservatives within his party. Senators Rand Paul and Ron Johnson have voiced concerns over potential increases in national debt, signaling a challenging path ahead for Trump's legislative goals. As the administration navigates these multifaceted challenges, Trump's Memorial Day speech encapsulates the duality of his presidency, one that seeks to elevate military achievements while concurrently engaging in combative political rhetoric and economic maneuvers. Looking ahead, the administration's ongoing trade negotiations and domestic agenda will likely remain at the forefront of its efforts, with significant implications for both the economy and national discourse as the 2024 election approaches.